years. Are the North Koreans in Russia? I'm not talking about on the other side of Siberia training. Are they in the area near Ukraine? Are they on their way there, or do we not know any more today than we knew when I last asked you this last week?
Unfortunately, the answer to your last question is no. We don't know an awful lot more, except Putin has sort of spoken out about it again. He's not denying it. What he's saying is, look, we have a mutual defense treaty with North Korea. So it's none of your damn business if there are North Korean soldiers in our country. Wise up. If there are, well, they are duty bound under this treaty to come to our defense if we are invaded. Sotto voce. We have been invaded in Kursk.
Right.
So for them to show up in Kursk, no big problem. That's just a demonstration that there's teeth in this treaty, and that works both ways. South Korea, if you have any designs on stirring up trouble in North Korea, we're there and we're duty bound to come to the aid of North Korea. This is big. And he said it twice now, once at BRICS and once just on Friday. So he's trying to drive home this thing. Look, we have a treaty obligation here. And if the North Korean troops come into Kursk, well, that's proof positive that has teeth. And, it's none of your damn business. Now, are they needed in courts? Give me a break. They're not needed in courts. Will they show up in courts? Maybe a platoon or a company, I imagine. But it's demonstrative. And meanwhile, and this is really important, over the last 36 hours, the Russians have taken key strategic positions in the Donbass, in Donetsk. And it looks like in another week or so, even another couple of days even before the election, Putin has the potential to send those troops all the way to the Dnieper River. That'd be another embarrassment to our administration right now.
Here's President Putin on Friday, October 25th, right after the conclusion of the BRICS conference in Kazan, Russia. Chris, cut number one.
Satellite images are said to show North Korean troops here in Russia. What are they doing here? And wouldn't that be a massive escalation in the Ukraine war?
Now, as for our relationship with the North Korea, we ratified our Treaty on Strategic Partnership, which contains Article 4, and we have never doubted the fact that North Korean leadership is very serious about their commitments to us and engagement with that. But as for how we do and what we do, it's up to us to decide under Article 4 of this treaty. First, we need to hold the relevant talks about implementing Article 4 of the Treaty on Strategic Partnership with North Korea. We're in contact with our friends from North Korea. We'll see how this process develops. That said, the Russian armed troops are moving forward very steadily. No one can contradict that. It's moving forth at all the parts of the line of contact.
So as I read that, and please put your own reading on it, Ray, if they need our help, we'll be there. And if we need their help, they'll be here.
Yes. And again, to emphasize the nature of this treaty, when it was signed a year ago, it surprised the hell out of me. I mean, the Russians are very discreet, very perspicacious. They don't want to get bound into a relationship which requires them to come to the aid of North Koreans who have not traditionally been very restrained in what they do, but they did it anyway. Besides that, we have very sophisticated Russian missilery technology gone to North Korea. So the situation is really such that Putin is trying to advertise the fact, look, we have allies to not only Belarus, we've got North Korea and sotto voce, China, Iran. You ought to remember this, Mr. Biden, because we have these guys. They're not bound by most of them by a treaty like NATO, but that's even better because bilateral treaties, defense treaties like the one we have with North Korea, they come into effect once either country is invaded. Again, Putin doesn't go to the next sentence and say, well, yeah, we were invaded by the Ukrainians. And of course, one of the moving forces behind all this public discourse is Zelensky himself and people who favor the Ukrainians continuing the struggle and are saying, oh, the Koreans are coming, the Koreans are coming. Now, one last thing, because people might be a little wondering about this. On Friday, we had a one-source report which said that this was preparatory. All this North Korean presence in Russia was preparatory to a move by Ukraine and NATO, US, to send South Korean pilots and F-16s to an airbase in Romania. One of the reports said they're already there. Now, what would that be for? Well, because these Ukrainian pilots are not really trained well on these F-16s. They still haven't grasped the language. The South Koreans know English chapter and verse. How many F-16 do they have? Over 100. How many pilots? More than 100. So it all makes sense in a conceptual case. But what does that mean? There's nothing since then. It could mean that this was kind of a straw in the wind put out by this one source who's very close to the Kremlin and to the Russian military, say, look, we know that Zelensky would also like this. Just be aware that we know about that, and we're not gonna hunker back on our defense obligations to North Korea. Just be aware that if those South Korean pilots go up, they're going to get hit just as the Israeli missiles were hit just on Friday night or Saturday night, whatever it was.
How do you think the elites in the EU and NATO will react to the presence of North Korean troops in Europe fighting?
Well, they will raise a din, but as Putin explained, he's very specific. Look, we have this relationship with, if they're training with us or if they're here, it's none of your damn business. Isn't that pretty much what we say when the Russians complain about, NATO troops in Ukraine or Poland?
I'm just laughing because you say it so credibly, so matter-of-factly.
Yeah, I wish I had the Russian here, but he says, I suggest this is no one else's business, period, end quote,
Wow.
in English. So, I mean, fair is fair. And the thing that I would emphasize here is that Putin has come back to this twice now, and he's trying to demonstrate, look, we've worked out our bilateral defense treaty relationships in such a way that you should accept it. You should believe it. With respect to China, with respect to Iran, it'll be something short of a mutual defense treaty obligating each side to come to the aid of the other if they're invaded, but it'll be tantamount to that. And one last footnote here. What about this Iran-Russian treaty? Oh, wait a second. They've been working on it for 2.5 years. 3 months ago, so it was going to be signed at Kazan, at the BRIC. Oh, no, then the head of Iran said, no, we hoped it would, but it wasn't. And is it going to be signed ever? It'll be signed when the Russians have a believable pledge from Iran not to raise the ante in West Asia, not to retaliate for the feckless retaliation from Israel over the weekend.
Here's President Putin at the same press conference, this time talking about Russian troops and Ukrainian troops in Kursk. Number 2, Chris.
Our troops are very active in the Kursk direction, but some of the Ukrainian units that have mounted an incursion into the Kursk region have been blocked and encircled. This group totals around 2,000 people. There are attempts at deblocking that from outside. There are also attempts at a breakthrough from the inside. Right now, the Russian troops are proceeding to eliminate this group of forces that has been encircled.
The Russian troops are focusing on eliminating this group of forces that has been encircled. This is consistent with what Larry has said, what you have said.
Well, the
what
Russians call
Ritter
it.
has said, what everybody that's looked at this has said, except for President Zelensky.
Well, it's obvious that this was a fool's errand. No one knows exactly why Zelensky laid this thing on and why NATO advisors promoted him, said yep, okay, let's do this. But the Russians call it a cauldron, okay? The encirclement is now a cauldron. I think there were about 20,000 troops sent in from elite groups and there aren't too many elite groups in Ukrainian armed forces, and they've been decimated, and the ones that remain are all in this little cauldron. Even the escape routes back into Ukraine proper have been blocked. So why all this? Could no one predict this? Of course they could predict this, but they did it anyway. Why? Well, it has to do with pre-election politics. It has to do with Zelensky's hell-bent desire to show the West that no, we can do this we can even invade Russia. How he got his military to go along with this is another question. Whether this makes him still weaker, I'm sure it does, because the military now is scratching its head and saying, my God, most of our people are surrendering or retreating or running away. What are we going to do now? Let's get rid of Zelensky, bring back Zelensky from London.
How much longer can Zelensky last?
Well, as long as Washington allows it. Now, Washington is the one that will tell the powers that be in Kiev how long Zelensky should stay around. They have no alternative right now. They're waiting till the end, till the election. We'll see what happens then. And they too have a Zugzwang. They have a choice. They have a necessity to choose without any reasonable courses of action that promise success. So, it's a bad situation in both fronts. And not only that, but you have problems in the Taiwan Straits. Biden is probably going to be very glad to get out of there on the 20th of January. That said, he's going to have to make some real decisions, if he's capable of doing that, between now and the 20th of January. And my God, all bets are off. Depends largely on who wins next Tuesday.